It started with zucchini. 3 crooked ones in a paper bag, dirt still clinging to the ridges like old secrets. Mara found the bag propped against her front door the first summer after she and Ethan moved into the cul-de-sac. The note on top was short. "Too many from the garden. I'm Paige at 12B. Welcome." Mara let herself like the gesture. She was a school counselor used to calibrating people, warmth, boundary, eye contact. She rinsed the zucchini and sautéed them with garlic and salt, while Ethan unpacked the last boxes and set their coffee mugs in an orderly line above the sink. The house felt like possibility. The kitchen window framed a slice of the shared fence, a weathered gate with a stubborn hinge. Through it, she could see Paige's backyard. A small patch of raised beds and a lemon tree, leaves glossy and brave in the heat. They met properly the next afternoon. Paige was trimming basil and humming a tune from the radio. Her hair was sun-streaked and cut blunt at the shoulder. Her nails were clean, her smile quick. She asked real questions. What grade levels did Mara counsel? Where did Ethan work? Did they like the neighborhood? She laughed easily, tipping her head like you had said something clever. It was the kind of attention that floats people an inch off the ground. For weeks, they were just neighbors. Wave when rolling trash bins to the curb. Trade recipes for pasta salad and rosemary chicken. Paige had a husband who traveled for consulting and a teenage stepdaughter who came every other weekend. She had a dog that howled at sirens and then napped under the lemon tree. She had a way of making small talk feel intimate. Mara realized later how small the first tier had been. A simple tug on a thread. "You and Ethan are adorable," Paige said one evening, leaning against the fence while Mara deadheaded petunias. "He always looks at you like he's thinking of something nice to say." Mara smiled. "He's a good man." "Of course," Paige said. "We all have our blind spots." Mara brushed soil from her fingers and didn't ask what that meant. It felt like one of those dangling comments mature people let pass, but it landed somewhere and kept echoing. Blind spots. The phrase sat up in her mind and watched. Ethan's work demanded late nights. He designed software for a supply chain firm. He came home with his tie askew and a stubborn crease between his brows. He was the kind of man who described his day in categories. Solved. Unresolved. Pending. He kissed Mara's forehead before bed and cupped her face with a tired palm. They were trying for a baby. She tracked temperatures. He pretended to understand what luteal phase meant. It was ordinary and tender. Marriage felt like a shared project with good days and a few messy ones. Paige slipped into the spaces the mess made. It started with practical favors. Could Mara sign for a package? Could she text Ethan to move his car so the city tree trimmers could get through? Could she bring over the leftover lemon bars because Paige had baked too many? Then the favors leaned toward Ethan. "I caught him out there trying to fix the gate," Paige said to Mara one Saturday, laughing. "He's handy, right? My hinge squealed like a dying bird." He said he couldn't listen to it anymore. Mara found Ethan on the patio with a screwdriver. He shrugged like it was nothing. It took 5 minutes. He smelled like cedar and soap. She kissed him and felt silly for feeling possessive. Paige was good at praising people for ordinary things. She knew how to make a man feel useful. She knew how to choose a t-shirt that looked accidental and perfect, and when to look up from her phone with a flash of gratitude like sunlight on glass. The first real sign came disguised as a warning. Paige stopped Mara by the mailbox and lowered her voice. "Hey, I hate to be the one to say this," she said, "but I saw Ethan talking to the new woman on Chestnut, the one with the silver Prius." She touched his arm twice. "Maybe nothing. If you were my friend, I'd want to know." Mara felt an old panic flicker inside her. She had been 22 once with a college boyfriend who said he was confused about a coworker. Thanks, she said, keeping her face smooth. I'm sure it's nothing. Paige laid a hand on her arm. He loves you. I can tell. But people get lonely. Busy. It's easy to miss each other. That night, Mara told Ethan. He frowned. The Prius woman asked about the HOA newsletter, he said, baffled. We talked for 4 minutes. I don't know where Paige got arm-touching. Maybe I misheard, Mara said, cheeks hot. The room felt tight with something unspoken. Ethan got quiet in that way he did when he thought he was being assessed. They ate dinner in clinking noises and avoided the subject. Paige stepped closer after that. She waved when Ethan came home, then walked over with a question about her sprinkler timer that always seemed to require him to cross into her yard. Mara told herself to be chill. You don't want to be that wife. You trust your husband. You don't read into a neighbor's t-shirt that slides off one shoulder when she reaches for a hose. When Ethan worked late, Paige texted Mara. You okay tonight? Want to come watch garbage reality TV and mock their hair? I made too much risotto. Mara went over sometimes. They ate out of the same bowl and laughed easily. Paige could be silly. She could tell a story that made a simple grocery run feel like a sketch comedy bit. She was good at sitting too close without feeling like a threat. Mara liked her. That is the part that made everything after feel like a trick wrapped in a gift. Fall came crisp and honey-colored. The lemon tree wore a crown of green fruit. Mara peed on sticks and counted days. Ethan took vitamins. The house settled with its wooden breaths. Paige's husband was home less and less. The stepdaughter stopped coming. Paige called her too cool for us now. She started wearing Ethan's old hoodie that he had left draped on a chair after fixing the gate. Borrowed, she said, eyes bright with apology. It smells like your fabric softener. Comfort stink. Mara laughed. Keep it for now. She said it easily and then felt the sting of the words afterward, like lemon on a chapped lip. Thanksgiving was the first break. It cracked with sound. They had planned to drive to Ethan's parents', 3 hours away, but his boss scheduled a Monday presentation, and Ethan asked to stay back and work through the weekend. We'll go for Christmas, he promised, rubbing his face. I'll owe you. Mara set up a small table by the window. She cooked turkey breast, mashed potatoes, green beans with slivered almonds. She made pecan pie even though she always burned the edges. They ate with their knees touching. Ethan's phone blinked through the meal like a heartbeat he could not control. After pie, he took a call that stretched long. His voice turned clipped. No, ship dates can't move. The warehouse timeline is set. I don't care what Liam said. No, listen. Paige knocked while he was still on the phone. She brought over cranberry relish with orange zest and hugged Mara with a quick squeeze. It smells amazing, she said. You two, dream team. She left and came back 15 minutes later with a bottle of wine, then again with leftover rolls she swore were better than Mara's because of the butter brand, and then again with her dog that had become frantic at fireworks 2 blocks away. Each time, Ethan was still on the call. Each time, Paige's eyes did a sweep of the room. She was looking for something. She was always looking. On the 4th trip, she lingered by the window and glanced at Ethan's laptop. He's still on? She asked, soft, like concern. This job eats him. He's good at it, Mara said. I know, Paige said. She paused. You can tell me to mind my business. But when my ex worked like this, the hours covered a lot. Good men can hide behind busy. She nudged the dog with her foot. If you ever need to talk, I mean it. No judgment. I've seen things. Mara felt something clutch her ribs. He's faithful, she said, the way a student says the right answer. Of course, Paige said. You two are rock solid. She looked at the laptop again, then at Mara. Everyone underestimates loneliness. After Paige left, Ethan came back to the table and pressed his fingers to his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said. "I feel like I'm failing at 2 jobs." Mara went to bed with a tight chest and a mind full of Paige's voice. She lay awake and rehearsed a conversation she didn't want to have. The story you tell when you need to find a villain, and it cannot be the person you love. 2 weeks later, Mara found the first message. She was on the shared desktop to print permission slips for a school trip when an alert popped up. It was a shared album notification from Paige. Title: Lemon Tree Life. Most photos were harmless. The dog mid-yawn, sunlight through leaves, a bowl of lemons with blemishes that looked like dimples. At the end there was a video, 2 minutes long. The camera leaned against something steady. The frame was Paige's kitchen. She hummed that radio tune. She wore Ethan's hoodie. She stirred something on the stove. The door to the yard opened. Ethan's voice came in, muffled but warm. "Smells like IKEA in here," he said. "Meatballs and vaguely Swedish." Paige laughed. "I was taste testing for you. Here." He stepped into view, took the spoon, and blew on the sauce. He made a face. "Needs more salt." They were close. The camera angle made it look closer. When he handed back the spoon, his fingers grazed her wrist. Paige said, "You're impossible," like a compliment. Mara watched twice. The second time she tried to breathe like a normal person. She knew how videos lie, angles, crops. 4 inches can look like intimacy. She knew Ethan's teasing voice, the relaxed shape of it. She knew Paige had the hoodie in a way that was both innocent and not. She locked the computer and sat on the floor. When Ethan came home, she held up the screen. "Explain." He watched, face tightening. "We were making sauce. She asked for help with the taste. The camera is weird. It's not like that." "She sent me this," Mara said. "Why would she send me this?" He lifted his hands. "Ask her. It's not what you think. I swear to you. I love you. I'm not that guy." Mara believed him because she could not bear a world where she didn't. They ate leftover soup and watched a show without speaking and held hands too tightly at the cuff. The next day, Paige texted, "Ignore the last video. I sent the wrong thing, LOL." Mara stared at the 3 letters and felt rage like a clean blue flame. She typed and erased. She typed again. "Please stop doing this," she wrote. "Stop involving Ethan. Stop sending me things." Paige's reply was instant. "Oh no, are you upset? That was nothing. I thought it was funny. I'm so sorry. I would never." A minute later, "You know I care about you. If you're ever worried, I'm here." Mara did not respond. She put the phone face down and breathed in counts of 4. That week, the sink in Paige's kitchen leaked. She asked Ethan to look. He said no. He said it kindly and did not look at Mara while he said it. Paige's smile stiffened. "Okay," she said. "I can call a plumber. You could have just said you were busy." Ethan closed the door and exhaled. "She's mad." "Good," Mara said. Things quieted. Paige waved but did not linger. She texted less. Mara felt a steadiness return like an old song. She and Ethan made pasta on Fridays and bickered about whether to adopt a cat. They planned a weekend away in January. Mara let hope flood the room again. December brought the HOA meeting at the community center. Paige was on the board. She loved bylaws. She loved the power to decide whether someone's holiday lights stayed on after 10 p.m. She stood at the front with a clipboard and ran the meeting like a teacher with a tired class. At the end, as people milled in the hall, she joined Mara by the coffee urn. "I owe you a real apology," she said, voice low. "I was out of line. I miss my husband. He's gone a lot. It made me needy and messy. I'm sorry if I complicated anything. You're good people." Mara felt relief move through her. "Thank you," she said. "Let's reset." They hugged. Paige smelled like lemons and a perfume Mara couldn't name. It felt like a truce. It felt like a door closing softly. 2 nights later, the police knocked. It was 11:40. Ethan had fallen asleep on the couch. Mara opened the door and found 2 officers on the porch, faces professional and careful. "Ma'am," the taller one said, "we received a call about a domestic disturbance at this address." Mara's mouth opened. "No, you didn't. We need to come in and make sure everyone is okay." Ethan sat up disoriented while the officers stepped into the living room and did a gentle, thorough job of being present in someone else's home. They asked questions. Has there been yelling? Any threats? Is anyone intoxicated? Has anyone put hands on anyone else? Mara answered no in measured tones. Ethan kept saying, "What is this?" in a smaller voice. The officers looked embarrassed and left with "sorry to bother you" smiles and the weight of protocol between them. Paige texted 5 minutes later. "Everything okay?" she wrote. "I heard voices. I didn't want to overstep, but I got worried." Mara stared at the screen. Her hands shook. She typed slowly. "Did you call the police?" Paige: "Oh my God, no. I would never. I just heard. I'm sorry. Was that them? I'm shaking. I'm so sorry if I caused trouble." Mara put the phone down. Ethan stood in the kitchen staring at the dark window. "What is happening?" he asked, each word separate. "What she wants," Mara said, and hated how true it felt. She hated how good Paige was at staying one step toward innocence. They should have moved. Mara thinks that sometimes. Later. They should have listed the house the next day and slept on an air mattress in a rental across town and burned the garden beds to the soil. But should is a word that grows mold on the past. They stayed because moving feels like failure and because the lemon tree still threw shade exactly where the patio needed it. They stayed because hope makes fools of the steady. January brought 2 lines on a test. Mara sat on the edge of the tub with her hand over her mouth and the kind of joy that is only quiet because it is too big to make sound. Ethan knelt in front of her and cried. They held each other and made promises. In April, Ethan began to feel like a man standing between 2 mirrors, his reflection bouncing back and forth until he couldn't tell which was true. He kept his head down at work and avoided long eye contact with anyone at the mailbox cluster. Mara watched him shrink in the doorway of their bedroom and wanted to shake him and cradle him at the same time. When someone is destroying your life and refuses to own the wreckage, you learn to document. Mara saved texts, took screenshots, wrote dates and times in a notebook with a black cover. It felt insane. It felt necessary. She was not litigious by nature. She was a school counselor who believed most people could be talked down from ledges if given snacks and a calm voice. But she had run out of calm. She called a lawyer who did both harassment cases and HOA disputes. The woman's voice was brisk and kind. "I hear this more than you'd think," she said. "Neighbors who get obsessed. It's not always about romance. Sometimes it's about control. Sometimes it's about breaking something because it's there." They sent a cease and desist letter with exact language about defamation and intrusion. They CC'd the HOA board. They printed it and handed it across the fence when they saw Paige outside. Paige read it and looked bored. "You think paper can fix your marriage," she said. "That's cute." 2 weeks later, Ethan confessed a secret that wasn't his but felt like it was. "I went over there once after the police thing," he said, voice dull with shame. "When you were at your sister's. I wanted to tell her to stop. I thought maybe if I confronted her in her space, she'd listen. She cried. She said she was lonely. Nothing happened. I swear on my dad's grave, but I went. I shouldn't have. I made it worse." Mara stared at him and felt a red curtain lower across the stage. "You went," she repeated. Her own voice sounded like someone else's. "You went." "I thought I was protecting you," he said. "I didn't want you dealing with it." She sat down slowly. "You gave her a story to tell." "I know," he said, small. "I know." They tried counseling. They sat in a beige room and told a stranger about a lemon tree and a casserole and a video of sauce. The counselor asked meaningful questions about boundaries and honesty. She did not understand that offense can be a weapon in the right hands. She suggested they write down 5 good things about each other on sticky notes and put them on the bathroom mirror. It helped for a week. It felt like trying to fix a window while the house burned. By June, Ethan had moved into the guest room permanently. They said it was to reset. They said it was to give each other space to feel less like suspects. Mara fell asleep on the couch with the TV light painting her face blue. The dog next door barked at fireworks. The lemon tree dropped fruit that rolled unevenly toward the gate. In July, a letter came from the HOA about multiple complaints regarding noise and conflict at your property. Mara attended the next board meeting with her lawyer. Paige sat at the front with a neutral face. When the lawyer read out the pattern of behavior, the timestamps, the false calls, the rumors with specific names attached, Paige blinked once. Slow. She raised her hand when it was her turn. "I'm hurt," she said, voice soft. "I have tried to be a friend. I have given them produce and help. Ethan came to me for support. If this is how they repay kindness, I don't know what to say. The constant shouting over there has frightened my dog. I did call once. I admit it because I heard something scary. I will not apologize for protecting myself." Mara stood without being asked and said evenly, "There has been no shouting. I have witnesses and police reports. The only frightening thing here is your fixation." The room went quiet. A man from down the street coughed. The board voted to mediate. Nothing changed. In August, Mara found a second video. It arrived in an email from an unknown address. There was no text, just a link to a shared drive. The video was 2 minutes again. Paige's kitchen, night, the hoodie again. Ethan's face at the edge of the frame, tired and annoyed. "This is ridiculous," he was saying. "You have to stop. I'm serious." Paige stepped closer. "I'm not the one who keeps coming over," she said. "If it's so ridiculous, why are you here?" "I'm asking you to leave us alone," he said. "Then why are you here?" she said again, smiling a little, like she already knew the answer. Mara paused the video and scrubbed backward, then forward. It cut quickly. The angles were too neat, the audio too clear. She could not prove it was edited, but her instincts screamed. The manipulation wasn't even sophisticated. It was just enough to imply what wasn't there. She looked at Ethan. He stared at the table. "I told you I went," he said. "I told you nothing happened." "I know," she said, and she did. It didn't matter. The story was already out there growing legs. The truth was a quiet thing living under the porch, afraid of daylight. They lasted another month. It ended not with a confession or a fight, but with a series of small, practical decisions that together made a cliff. Ethan rented an apartment near his office to shorten the commute. He took half the mugs from the cabinet and most of the socks. Mara told him to keep the good frying pan because he cooked eggs better. He said he'd come by on Saturdays to mow until she hired a service. They hugged standing up, and then, because they had been trained by the world to be neat, they signed papers that used words like dissolution and equitable and property. Paige waved from her yard the morning the movers came. She wore sunglasses. She lifted her coffee cup in a casual salute. When Ethan closed the truck door, she blew him a kiss with 2 fingers and a laugh that only Mara heard. Mara moved through the weeks like a ghost that still needed groceries. She went to work and sat with 8th graders who had crushes on people who would not crush back and parents who didn't know how to be tender. She was good at the listening. She was good at writing down names and making referrals. She was less good at eating dinner before 10. She was less good at her own sleep. She stopped watching the lemon tree. One afternoon in October, a woman from Chestnut parked in front of Mara's house and knocked gently. She looked nervous. She had the posture of someone who had rehearsed being brave. "I heard what happened," the woman said. "I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. Paige asked me months ago to mention to you that I touched Ethan's arm. She said it would help you see. I told her no. I didn't think she'd do it without me. I didn't want to get involved, but I felt sick keeping quiet." Mara blinked. "Thank you," she said. It came out steady. "It doesn't change anything now, but thank you." The woman nodded and looked toward the lemon tree. "She's done this before," she said softly. "Different flavors. She likes to be the center of stories." After the woman left, Mara sat on the front step and let the afternoon sun warm her neck. She felt grief, and she felt something like relief that the map made sense, even if it led somewhere she had not wanted to go. In November, the HOA quietly sanctioned Paige for filing a false complaint. They called it misuse of community resources. It came with a fine and a formal note. It did not come with the kind of apology that stitches anything back together. Winter softened the edges of the neighborhood. People put lights in windows and pretended they had not watched a marriage dissolve like sugar in hot water. Mara bought a fake tree because the smell of pine made her cry. She put 3 ornaments on it and a paper star. There is a way grief rewires a mind. It strips language down to the beams. It makes you speak in the simplest tense. I loved. It ended. I am still here. Mara was still here. She started running at dawn. At first, she couldn't make it to the park without stopping to clutch her side. The muscle built slowly, almost in secret. She learned the cracks in the sidewalk and the exact spot where a streetlight flickered off when the sun tipped over the horizon. She learned how to let her mind be empty for the time it took to loop the block. She went to a new therapist who didn't suggest sticky notes. This one said, "You were targeted by someone who needed you to break so she could feel whole." She said, "It wasn't romance. It was possession. She wanted to own the story of your life." She said, "You don't have to forgive to be free." In March, the lemon tree flowered and the smell made Mara's stomach flip. She walked around the block to avoid it. Then one morning she turned the corner and walked straight past. Her heart beat, and nothing else happened. She smiled into the cold and felt something shift back into place. Ethan texted now and then about taxes and the stray package. They were polite. He asked about her runs. She asked about his new commute. They did not talk about Paige. The silence around that name became a cool lake they did not swim in. Summer crept in. The lemon tree made shade at the same angle. Paige hosted a barbecue and laughed loudly. The dog had a new collar. The stepdaughter came back twice. Life refused to pause for anyone's heartbreak. On a hot Thursday, Mara heard a knock at the fence. She walked out and found Paige leaning on the top rail. "I'm moving," Paige said. "My husband got a contract in Denver. We're renting the house to his cousin for a while. I thought you'd want to know." She wore a white dress and a face that looked younger when she was pleased with herself. "You must be thrilled." Mara stared at her. The word thrilled tasted like lemon pith. "Good luck," she said, and meant it in the coldest, kindest way a person can mean something. Paige studied her. "You never fought hard enough for him," she said. "That was your mistake. You were so busy being moral." Mara laughed. It surprised both of them. "You break things," she said simply. "That's what you do, and then you tell yourself a story about why it was mercy." Paige blinked. For the first time, she looked unsure. She opened her mouth and then shut it. She touched the fence and didn't speak. "Goodbye, Paige," Mara said, and went inside. The cousin moved in with a quiet boyfriend and a fondness for potted lavender. The dog went to Denver. The lemon tree stayed because the ground had claimed it. 2 weeks later, a branch cracked in a storm and fell onto Mara's side of the fence. She cut it into neat pieces and gave most of the lemons to the librarian. A year passed, then 2. Grief turned from a heat to a solid thing she could set on a shelf with the other important solids. Every so often, she dusted it and set it back. Mara did not remarry, not quickly. She made a small, good life out of the materials that remained. She planted beans that failed and tomatoes that did not. She bought a cat who regarded her with respectful disdain, until one night it slept on her head like a weird hat, and then everything was fine. She learned to like the click of her own front door lock when it slid home each evening. She taught 8th graders how to name feelings and how to sit with them and not explode. She saw Ethan at the farmer's market once, near the jars of jam. He looked older in the ways that matter, softer around the shoulders, careful at the eyes. They stood in a patch of shade and caught up like cousins at a reunion. He said, "I'm sorry," not for the first time, and she said, "I know." And then for the first time, "Me too. We didn't know how to protect us." He nodded. He told her he was seeing someone kind. She told him she had started a little garden club at school. They wished each other well in a way that was not performative. They meant it. On the way home, she bought 3 lemons. She cut them thin and put them in water and sat on the back step while the evening went from gold to nothing. Here is what she learned. People who break things for sport choose targets who give them juice. Quiet, competent, loving people are a challenge. If the neighbor can make them wobble, they win a prize. The trick is not to become stone, pretending you cannot be moved. The trick is to know which weather belongs to you and which blows in from someone else's storm. Sometimes the neighbor's storm destroys your marriage. Sometimes you rebuild anyway, but by yourself. A new family moved into 12B with a toddler who threw chalk on the walkway and a father who whistled off-key while grilling. They asked if anyone nearby liked zucchini. Mara raised her hand. "I make bread out of it," she said, smiling. In September, the cat found a warm patch of sun on the kitchen table and refused to move. Mara ate toast around it and read a book about running. She had plans to take a weekend trip to the coast alone. She hesitated over whether to invite a friend and then decided no, not this time. The silence felt valuable, not empty. Owned. On the morning she left, she pulled the gate shut and heard the hinge groan. It was a familiar sound. She stood for a moment and then fetched the screwdriver. It took 5 minutes to fix. The gate swung open and closed. Clean, obedient, final. She washed her hands, packed a cooler, and took the coast road with the windows down. The lemon tree stood where it always had. It did not care about her life, and that felt like mercy too. On the second day, she sat with her feet in the cold water and thought about the simple truth that had been waiting all along. The neighbor did not destroy her marriage by herself. She started a fire and fed it. Ethan had stacked dry wood. Mara had stood too long at the window believing the flames would learn manners. 3 truths, each heavy, each bearable. She closed her eyes and listened to waves. When she opened them, a child had built a crooked castle at the shoreline and run away. The tide took it without apology. The sand stayed. Mara stayed.